Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. It's Jolene with Joey Star Astrology, and I'll be talking to you today about the new moon in Scorpio that we are experiencing today, November the 13th, 2023. And we'll take a look at the chart and see what it's telling us about the energy in the air today. We'll take a look at the Sabian symbols so we can get a little bit more depth and talk about the archetype of Scorpio and the aspects that it's making and what might we be able to expect. So what is the chart telling us about this lunar event? And a new moon, of course, is when the sun and moon comes together. It happens every month and begins a new cycle. Uh, new moon energy tends to last longer. So we could see the unfoldment of this new moon over the course of the next 6 months. But because of a few of the aspects it's making, there might be many of us, especially if we're, directly affected by this new moon, that see where we see changes right away, immediately, and they could be very surprising. Of course, Scorpio is all about deep rooted change, transformation, and themes around death. So the change is not always easy. It's a fixed water sign, and fixed signs do not like to change. Water makes it very emotional. Can also be connected to the past. Why? Because water is connected to the past. It's our memory. It's what we hold. So it could be a very cathartic new moon and new cycle to begin for many of us. And of course, if you are a Scorpio, Taurus, Aquarius, or a Leo, or have any placements near in those signs, from about 16 to about 24 degrees, because the event is happening at 20, you will likely be affected by this new moon cycle very significantly. So we'll pull up the chart, we'll take a look. I hope everybody's doing okay. Thank you for being patient with me. It's been about a week, maybe just a smidge longer since I've done a video, but I've had a lot of things going on here. I've had some illness in the house and, well, life stuff, right? So thanks for being patient. Thanks for coming back. I hope everybody is doing well since the last lunar event, the eclipse on the 28th of October. And now we move on to this new moon. So I'm going to pull up the chart and take a look, and we'll explore all of the goodies and see what we've got going on here. Okay, so here's the chart. Right here. Boy, this looks like a busy chart to me, right? I've looked at it, been looking at it obviously for a little while, breaking it down and coming up with my own impressions. But here we have the new moon, November 13th today, 2023. Of course, it's already the actual perfection of the new moon is already happened. It was in the middle of the night. 2:27 a.m. here where I'm at in Phoenix, Arizona, and 4:27 on the East Coast, 1:27 a.m. on the West Coast. Please adjust for your time zone if you are elsewhere in the world. Okay, so let's get down to the nitty gritty. Here we have the new moon over here, sun and moon conjunct at 20 degrees of Scorpio. And I outlined more than just that. You can see there's a heavy emphasis of Scorpio energy in the air right now. And that makes for a huge level of intensity, which I think we can all see. I mean, whether or not you have planets or points in the fixed signs, we can observe things out there in the world that are going on. And I think we can all feel the intensity of this energy. Scorpio energy is very intense. It wants us to change something. We might find ourselves being fairly introspective, maybe a little broody or moody, maybe not feeling so great, maybe angry and sort of frustrated and irritated. with Mars there, conjunct this new moon. And we have an opposition. This moon is a little bit special in that there is an opposition to the planet Uranus in the sign of Taurus at 21 degrees retrograde. Uranus is the planet of change, and it is the planet of what's unexpected. It can be very explosive. There can be shifts and changes that happen very, very quickly. They can be catastrophic as well, especially when we're talking about the Earth sign of Taurus. That represents our body and our nourishment and our resources and our finances. And then Scorpio over here, that represents our things that we need to change. It represents secrets and crisis and toxicity in many cases, and of course the themes surrounding the 8th house and Scorpio, which are sex, death, transformation, and also money and power. So we're talking about some pretty significant issues. And when we are dealing with a new moon lunar event conjunct its ruler, a very strong Mars in the sign of Scorpio, and Mars can be aggressive, cutting, severing, movement, in Scorpio, water sign. I talked about Mars and Scorpio and what that signified. It's very deep and very regenerative, and it can be, it's silent but deadly. How's that? But it can be devastating and catastrophic. But it's going to change something in a way that is not going to be able to it's going to change it forever, right? So this is deep change, right? So we could see and experience in our lives just some very surprising and significant changes. So look for those themes. And if you're not being affected by those things, definitely you'll be able to observe those things out in the world. And I think we have seen a lot of that. And I watch the headlines in the news and things like that, and I think we've seen a lot of high profile people. Listen, it's not just about high profile people, right? But we've seen that the lunar events as of late have brought us news and information about the death of people. It's also uncovered information about people that are in power and control around things that have to do with a lot of money, things that have been hidden and uncovered. Scorpio is very much a sign that brings out secret information. And I think I saw something recently about what was it, an online escort service, or I don't know if it was online, but an escort service that had been operating for a very long time that involved a lot of politicians and people in government and military, that the FBI actually busted this ring and uncovered that that operation, right? And of course, we've got the child trafficking issue that just continues to be uncovered. We've got a lot of information and things coming out these days about banking and the insurance industry, the healthcare insurance industry, as well as other insurance industries, but just a lot of activity, movement, and information coming out these days around topics like that. And of course, the age-old things that revolve around mental illness and drugs and drug trafficking and death as a result of drugs. So we see these themes going on. War, also, Mars and Scorpio. We have a new moon here that is calling for transformation and change, which is going to require, however this is affecting you, but definitely what we see out there in the community is going to require us to really go deep and sort of clean out the closet, uncover the hidden meanings and history behind anything that's going on in our lives before we can actually move forward and transform, um, or restart, with a completely clean slate, right? That's part of what this moon could signify, and seems to be signifying in some way, in the collective. But for you in your life, if you're being affected by this could just be a new moon that is bringing about some deep transformational change, and it could be in a very unexpected way. And so definitely watch for that. Like over the weekend, I had to go out and it was like Saturday. I had to go out and drive quite a bit of a distance on Saturday night. And, there's like pros and cons in knowing about the astrology, but I was like so hyper vigilant on the road because, I knew that Mars is in Scorpio and we were in the dark moon phase coming up on this lunar event. And I was like, oh, want to be really careful out there on the roads because people can be aggressive. This is energy in the air that where we can see a lot of aggression. And the reasons behind that aggression are, probably have nothing to do with what's going on in the moment, but nonetheless, they're there and we can get caught in the middle of it. And so I was very, very careful, but it was interesting that on my drive on the way there and on the way back, there were two really, really bad car accidents, and the roads were taped off and they were rerouting traffic, and it was just like this chaotic shit show. And I was like, here we are. Of course, thinking about it for me, it was like, well, Mercury is in Sagittarius, and Mercury represents travel, but it also represents, how people are thinking and communicating. And, in the sign of Sagittarius, where it just recently, moved into, yeah, it can bring more optimism, but it also brings much more outspoken behavior. And just because it's ruled by Jupiter, it can make things very, very big. So if we're talking about Mercury and driving, it can just be kind of off the wall. Sagittarius is a bit of a run wild kind of energy. So I was very, very careful over the weekend. I was like, I'm going to kind of watch where I'm going. And that would be advisable, right? I would advise you all to do that here for a little while. And I mean, everybody should be doing that anyway. But I just think with so much going on, with finances and the cost of resources and the problems that everybody's having with, jobs and families and issues and things like that, just naturally raises tension, right? But from an astrological standpoint, there are people out there that are very much experiencing the death and loss of people close to them, and just feeling very, very heavy. And so in our environment, that energy seeps through. So this is definitely a time where we want to be vigilant and be careful. And a lot of us may feel like just hunkering down and staying to ourselves. And that's kind of like what my preference would be, just sort of to stay out of the chaos and out of the fray. But, I find when I do that, it's like I go into my thoughts, and I do find myself feeling very, very angry at what's going on in the world and thinking to myself, oh my gosh, like, can't we see the logic in all of this? Can't we just see what we're doing? Like, isn't there a way to fix this? And I find myself it's very emotional and frustrating for me when I see all of these things. And so I stay to myself, and then those thoughts just kind of get worse. So what do I do? what have I been doing? Trying to exercise as much as I can. Of course, I had a little cold there, but getting rid of some of that emotional energy through healthy physical means is definitely something that you might want to do right now. Rather than, if something's festering, rather than, get involved in some kind of a altercation or issue with somebody else, and when we're talking about an opposition with the planet Uranus, that can be very explosive. It's going to be relational. So usually it's between us and somebody else, or us in a situation that is outside of our of ourselves. And so, um, there are healthy ways to sort of process those things. My son is he's a social worker, right? He's got some pretty heavy Scorpio placements, and I had been looking at the lunar events, obviously, as I study the astrology ahead of time. And I told him a while ago, I'm like, because he's a social worker, but he's also a musician and an artist, and he writes songs and creates music. And I told him a while ago, when I saw these transits, I was like, ugh. I said, maybe if you wanted to create something, you had a song or some music that you wanted to put together that was a little bit edgy, right? A little emotionally, tends to write pretty emotional lyrics anyway about the past, the very scorpionic. Maybe it would be a good time for you to do that, right? It might be very beneficial, and actually a very lucky time for him to do that. And so it's interesting with astrology when you look at your own chart and you study it after a while and you realize the karma that's embedded in your chart. And then you think about your life and all of the things that have happened. When you learn more about your placements, you can proactively, yeah, fate is fate and things are going to happen. You do have, let's say, in a choice, but you can proactively apply some of that energy into your life in a positive way, and it meets the level of karma many times that's necessary in your life for the life that you've chosen. And so for him, that would be a perfect expression. And so he sent me a text last night saying, that song you were talking about that I should do, I think I just finished it. And I was like, that's great, right? And it's a perfect time to do something like that, right? Because with Mercury just ahead of this new moon, a very expressive Mercury ruled by Jupiter. It's about publishing. It's about speaking up. It's about understanding and knowledge of the higher mind. It's about truth. And with that squaring at the time of this new moon, Saturn in the sign of Pisces is a perfect time to put something Piscean into form. And that's very much music and feelings. And of course, this new moon is trining Neptune, which can represent the ending or dissolution of something, but it can also represent spiritual things. It can represent healing and putting just actively actively understanding and knowing what the situation is in your life, what your feelings are, where they're coming from, or exploring those things and putting that energy out there in a creative or a healing way is such a positive way to use this kind of energy. And when we're talking about a new moon, whatever we start here is likely to carry us through the next 6 months. It may feel like a sputter, right? Or a short start, but if we're working hard at it, something can come of it within the next 6 months. It's going to require patience, right? Saturn is direct though, so that's very helpful. But it'll require patience to actually see that new beginning, that transformation, that whatever it is that we are processing or purging or cleaning out, or trying to build or trying to become, create something that becomes very powerful and, sometimes in many ways very profitable when we talk about Scorpio and how it represents money and other people's money, is to be patient and let that grow, right? So we could see the culmination of whatever's going on in our life start to bear fruits within about 6 months. And if we're dealing with difficult emotional issues or the loss of something, we can expect that it's time for us to begin healing, right? And of course, if something has just happened, it takes time to even, sort of process grief, so that we can move forward. But this could be a beginning if we're experiencing some of you are experiencing a loss or some grief, could be the process of beginning to grieve and recover and heal from that. And so you'd want to be patient as well. Give that the next 6 months. Be gentle with yourself with this kind of energy. Let's take a look at the Sabian symbols. Oh, before we do that, I also want to mention that this new moon here is also conjunct Ceres. And Ceres is an asteroid, the asteroid Ceres, and represents basically nurturing, nourishment, where it represents mothers and daughters. It can represent grief and loss. It represents where we tend to take care of or need to be taken care of. In the sign of Scorpio, it can represent loss. I actually pulled something on it so that I could just read it real quickly here. Ceres rules food, agriculture, nourishment, transitions in a female's life, nurturing motherhood and family relationships. Ceres is connected to grief, as well as the possibility of destroying everything in one's path in order to regain what was lost. With Ceres, there is a strong need to nurture and protect, as well as to treat other living beings, including animals, with respect and reverence. She might also be connected to separation and time sharing, as Ceres in mythology had to strike a deal with Pluto, who had abducted her daughter Persephone, where she was to return Persephone to him for a portion of the year. Ceres represents the story of Ceres and Demeter and the daughter Persephone, who was taken to Hades, right? Lost, disappeared. Ceres conjunct this new moon can kind of adds those kinds of themes into this new moon as well. Ceres can describe our caregiving, nurturing, and loving qualities. Teaching, mentoring, gardening, farming, and cooking are strong associations. Ceres is democratic and caring and concerned about the environment and nutrition. With Ceres, we are drawn to what's natural, wholesome, good, and simple. Ceres is generally understated and not very adorned, and she very much appreciates the ordinary. So you can add that into the flavor of this new moon. I felt that is an important part of this new moon, being part of this Scorpio stellium, and might add a little bit more understanding and depth. So I'm going to read the Sabian symbols for 21 degrees of Scorpio. And also probably we'll take a look at 21 degrees of Taurus, where the opposition is. We'll look at two different books. But before we do that, I just want to also mention that Venus has moved into Libra, and Venus is the ruler of Taurus, where Uranus is sitting. And if we think of what Venus, first of all, Venus is in its home sign, in the sign of Libra, but Libra represents relationships and the feminine in many, many ways. So with the South Node in Libra and all of this Scorpio energy, we're talking about potentially emotions and loss when it comes to relationships. But also, because of the Taurus influence, we're talking about finances and money as well. And of course, like I said, Scorpio has connections to money as well. So, kind of depends on where it's at in your chart and what you're experiencing. But to me, and the way that I'm experiencing this, is a lot about relationships and emotion. So you'll have to tell me how this time is showing up for you. I'm going to stop the share, and then I will read the Sabian symbols. So we have 21 degrees of Scorpio. is a soldier derelict in duty. Keyword is deviation. The theme, termination in cooperation is cooperation. Termination is cooperation. Huh. That's almost like rejection is protection, right? Maybe. This symbol speaks to living with the consequences of decisions, and in particular to the consequences of impulsiveness or the failure to think things through thoroughly before acting. The image of a soldier derelict in his duty is one of the reversed or negative symbols, and it dramatizes the dilemma faced by the individual who makes a commitment in the hope of achieving some personal goal and discovers too late that he has made a mistake. Instead of fulfilling his dream, he is living a nightmare or compromising his own integrity. The implication here is that man basically moves towards his highest good and will not continue for long in any direction that frustrates him or fails to bring him happiness. At its highest, this symbol represents the ability to find cooperative means for resolving problems and a willingness to accept responsibility for mistakes. Negative would be irresponsibility and selfishness. Today, the accent is on negligence. You may find yourself dealing with the repercussions of someone failing to do what they promised to do. The opportunity would be your greatest advantage lies in resigning responsibly from any situation or position that holds no promise or potential for you. Tie up loose ends before you leave. Guard against letting yourself get carried away by emotion or desire in the middle of an important job. The consequences could be greater than you are prepared to face. Stepping stones, delinquency, carelessness, omission, oversight, disregard, failure, inefficiency, inattention, incompetence, malfeasance, indifference, thoughtlessness, wrongdoing, and negligence. So, that's 21 degrees of Scorpio. Kind of tells us that we want to tread lightly, be very careful about our movements, think things through, think about the history. We're talking about history, what's going on in the present, and how it's going to affect us in the future. That's how I'm reading this. If there are losses or things pass, sometimes it's not easy to realize that maybe in the long run it was the best thing, or that there was a reason that is of a higher nature than what we can see right in front of us. But basically, I read this as, just realize that what we say, what we do, and that our lives are constructed of something much more than what's going on right now. So there's more depth, more thought in how we say things and our actions that we may want to consider during this time, because if not, the implications can be devastating. And with an opposition to Uranus in the sign of Taurus, we're talking about big change, big disruption. So definitely something to think about. The other book that I read Sabian Symbols from, which is The Zodiac by Degrees by Martin Goldsmith. And I like this, again, because it's a little bit more modern. And I do both because the other Sabian symbol book actually gives us the Sabian symbol as they were originally written, along with the author's reflections. But this one is just a little bit more, it's a little more modern, and I like the twist and take that the author gives. So 21 Scorpio, ignored when he challenges his parents' interpretation of an event, a child goes to his room and practices aloud what he will say the next time the subject comes up. Uncompromising honesty, piping up with unsolicited comments, loudly voiced opinions will not be marginalized or shut up. Reacting against what other people are saying or are not saying, bringing up taboo subjects, getting genuine feedback from others versus refusing to listen or argue with them in absentia. So that's kind of like arguing without thinking, right? Just like arguing to argue. Reinforcing one's belief by constantly repeating them to others and to oneself. End up believing what they say to themselves, whether positive or negative, rejecting the scripts of authority figures and developing a script of one's own, unbroken consciousness in one's dreams or even after death, ghosts, identifying the spiritual issues behind social problems, teaching or preaching, throwing out a zinger that hits the mark and strongly influences the public's perception of an issue. So, if we take that in even further, it's like, yes, be careful what we're saying, what the implications are. Do we have the knowledge and the foundation to actually speak up about certain things, whether, we've had personal experience or experience out there in the world or education, but to realize that we have to look at things logically. It's kind of how I read that. It's like, what's the logic behind what I'm going to say? Is it just purely emotional, or is there something that I have to say or that I know or I've put together that's going to be helpful to the collective, right? To the community? Can we really see what's going on underneath? And that's very much Scorpio. So again, I see that as treading lightly, but also encouraging us to speak our mind based on what we know, while keeping and being mindful of the fact that everybody has experienced things differently. And so if we can't say or do something or engage in a way that is truthful but not hateful, then maybe we shouldn't. Of course, I don't know. That seems like a trivial request these days, and one that seems to be a little difficult for people to grasp. Right? Everybody's like in their corner with the gloves on these days. And maybe they always have been. I just, things have settled down in my life. And so maybe I'm just noticing it more. But it's just so much to me when I look at things, it's like, I'm here and you're there. And very little, how do we come together? But that's kind of what I feel like both of these Sabian symbol readings are telling us. Okay, then let's just do 22. It's going to be 22 Taurus because Uranus is at 21 degrees. So we'll round it up to 22. And this, Mars Uranus, Sun Uranus, and now the new moon Uranus opposition has been going on like all last week. So it's likely to have been, quite an explosive, surprising, or maybe a tense sort of feeling for the last week, or a feeling that, we're waiting for a shoe to drop or something, right? You just like feel it internally. It's like Scorpio energy is just sort of like around us, right? It's almost like, it can also, for me, like, and maybe for you, it almost feels like it's like there's a premonition, or there's like just a feeling that something may be coming. Kind of feels that way. It just kind of, it's thick, right? It's just not something, it's not passive energy. So those oppositions have been occurring all week since last week up until now. So the new moon just kind of comes along and says, well, here we go. Mars passed. And now Mercury is in Sag, and it's like, well, now it might be go time, right? It comes out, and it could be, in the form of something happening regarding a movement or a conversation or a statement or something like that, or an actual person, which could be Mercury. Okay, Taurus 22, a white dove over troubled waters, keyword guidance. A higher call. This symbol speaks to the fact that every individual comes into the world with a spiritual mission or purpose that guides him, whether or not it is recognized. The image of a white dove over troubled water symbolizes divine protection, the triumph of spirit over matter, peace of mind, and the ability to transcend emotional turmoil and psychological stress. Implicit in this symbol is the freedom and strength that can be gained from listening to the inner voice for guidance and direction. The suggestion here is that the individual who knows his purpose and sets out to fulfill it will succeed. On a practical level, this symbol can represent peace or an end to war. Well, gosh, let's hope, right? Dissension, enmity, or conflict. So an end to can represent peace or an end to war, dissension, enmity, or conflict. Didn't come out right when I broke it up, or did I have to go back and reread that? Positive, at its highest, this symbol represents a strong sense of personal destiny and the ability to rise above superficial difficulties and keep focused on a goal until it's achieved. Negative, confusion and lack of direction, or absent-mindedness and daydreaming. The accent is on rising above difficulties and emotional stress. Your greatest advantage lies in minding your own business, working on your own goals, and refusing to get involved in the problems of others. Guard against not paying attention or letting your mind wander. You may miss an important message. Stepping stones would be guidance, direction, message, advice, help, protection, mission, transcendence, and peace. Well, we have Uranus at that degree. So if something, Uranus is sudden change, but Uranus is also the higher mind, and it's our intuition. And that Sabian symbol could be applied to Uranus's role in this new moon or this new cycle, is really to dig deep into our intuition, look for the higher meaning, the higher calling of whatever is going on, has gone on, or will go on, or whatever we're working on, trying to transform, right? What are we trying to create? I kind of like that. All right, the other book here, we have Taurus 22. Let's see what it says. Taurus 22, a pirate radio station broadcasts from the top of the tower. A reporter delivers a parody of the government line in a voice loud enough to get through the government's jamming of the station. Airing an important message through reporting or through topical comedy. Okay. Radical observers and critics of the modern scene, translating one's message from a higher level of comprehension to the easily grasped language of the people, exasperated by people's failure to grasp the obvious. Oh, I cannot tell you how many times recently I've thought to myself, don't people like, isn't it obvious what's going on here? I'm sure that many of you see that, right? Maybe a lot of you have thought the same thing. Challenging people to attain a higher level of awareness, catalyzing the evolution of consciousness, extracting essential truths from a barrage of undigested data, picking out the meaning of a message through static, mistranslations, or other forms of noise, supplying missing or sensitive information to clarify what's going on, providing a counter spin to the establishment's take on the news, give away the whole game, shooting down an enemy's ideas with an arsenal of facts, argumentative. I really like that one. I think that's super appropriate to what is going on when we think about Uranus, which is change, and upsets, and in the sign of Taurus, which is, our finances and our food and, all of the things that we've seen going on. Boy, does that Sabian symbol really kind of hit it on the nail. It's like, well, we need to think and use our intuition and do some facts, or some digging and research regarding what the facts are, and what do we actually see going on versus what do we hear. I really like that reading as well from that book on 22 degrees of Taurus. So those are the Sabian symbols. We went over the chart. I think the other thing I didn't mention too, and I'm not going to pull the chart back up, but Mercury in Sagittarius is actually creating a sextile to Venus in the sign of Libra. So when it comes to communication and movement, the sextile, if we reach for that sextile, it's nice and harmonious. Venus is what's beautiful. It's considering, it's relationships. So the sextile there, it's also fair. balanced, and it's communicative, right? With the sextile to Mercury, which is the mind and communication, there's an opportunity there to sort of smooth over all of this muck and gunk that might be going on if we just reach for it and we exercise diplomacy, right? Or we exercise really just the essence of love and the things that we do and that we say can help with this heavy Scorpio Taurus energy that we are dealing with yet again. And that we are beginning a new 6-month cycle in our lives, depending on where it's at in our chart. So you want to pull out your chart and see where this new moon is occurring. What house is it occurring in? For me, it's occurring in my 6th house. That's my daily routines and my work and my health. Opposite my 12th house, which is, what's going on behind the scenes, what's hidden, my dreams. Check your chart and see where this is occurring. And if you're a Leo or an Aquarius and you've got a square, you're going to be pulling in the Scorpio Taurus opposition, as well as the house where your Leo and Aquarius are squaring. So if you're not sure and you don't know, just drop down in the comments where this is happening in your chart, and I'll give you a little insight, help explain it. If you're interested in taking a look at your birth chart, my email address and the website is down below, and I would love to chat with you. I'll be back. I'm going to do my very best to get consistent in my day-to-day routines, right, Scorpio? In the future here, if I can. But I appreciate you coming back to watch. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing, dropping a comment down in the comment section. It helps as I try to grow the channel. And I do appreciate it. I appreciate it very, very much. So let me know, or otherwise, just, let me know what's going on with you. I would really love to hear. Everybody should stay safe out there with this energy. Try and keep a low profile if you can. But yeah, we're all going to ride the wave together, right? And hope that we can actually use this energy to change and transform, and as Scorpio would say, rise again, like the phoenix, right? And something very something brand new and powerful and helpful, right? We can only hope that as the ball rolls, we can each take a piece of it and do our part to create change. Anyway, thanks so much. I will talk to you soon. Until then, may the stars forever be in your favor. Take good care. Bye for now.